Right, welcome everybody. I think we've got, it looks like quite a full agenda. We'll start off with apologies. Any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we've got apologies from Councillor Jeremy Aronson, Peter Watley and Fran Victory.
Okay. Thank you, Bronwyn. Declarations of disclosable and pecuniary interests.
Item 9, I'm a next door neighbour of 41 Geraldine Road.
Okay. And that's it, is it? Nobody else? David?
Yes, an interesting one. On item 11, licensing policy, it's that one. It's that one. There is an item on there about the introduction of bleed kits into places. I have one on the outside of my house which was used. I will take part in the discussion, but I will not vote on it.
Okay, thank you, everybody. The confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting on the 17th of June. Everybody's had a look at those. They're happy that they're a good representation, an accurate representation. So we're all happy with that, except those minutes. Chair's announcements, there are none, and we don't have any public participation. So we go on to the revenue and capital monitoring. And this is revenue and capital monitoring for 2025. So this report that you've got covers the expenditure for 25-26 against the approved revenue and capital budgets. And the report is for noting. So on the revenue side, we have the projection that's actually based on actual expenditures and known commitments. And the table that's in the report summarises the revenue spending for each service against the approved budget. And you can see more detail in the Appendix A. That's the details expanded in there in the Appendix A. The current projections predict an underspend of £495,000 against, again, due to the investment interest having performed exceptionally well. We've benefited from that, and against the budgeted figure, we've got an excess on that, as you will see in the numbers in the appendix. The development management income has increased as well. So in contrast to last year, we've got 148,000 overspend, and so we've made a healthy turnaround in that. On the cash management side, the cash position snapshot can be seen in the table, and note that this will actually fluctuate through the year as cash always does in accounts. So projecting at the moment an increasingly healthy balance for the end of the year of about £40 million. Just to note, last year that was projected to be £35 million. So we're actually heading in a solid, sound direction with our cash and investments. The investment interest can be seen in Appendix B, and the end of year figure there is 1.67 million projected return, which is in excess of the budget figure of 1.2 million. £26 million in short-term deposits exist in the money market, and we've got longer-term investments. The CCLA Property Fund, the CCLA Diversified Income Fund have got £9 million and £7 million respectively in them. So both of these have a capital growth element to them well, so it's not just interest, there's a capital growth element to it. I think overall the average interest earned is 4.08%, and I think the management of all this, the team, I think I said this last year, is the same. So it's well done to the team for optimising and getting the maximum out of that as far as the returns are concerned. The capital is summarised in the tables, which does not include committed expenditure, and you can see the figures there. The earmarked reserves are in the section 106, are tabled in Appendix C, if you want to have a look through that, if there's any issues on that. So overall, a very healthy position and a soundly managed financial state for the council. So open it up to any questions, any observations, any comments.
Just a quick one. You know, from my perspective, it all looks pretty good. So thanks to Andy and the team for this. It's good to see, obviously, investment interest has provide dividends. So that's really useful. And this is just being pernickety, but I might as well ask the question. No, I'm here. Just interested in the resources revenue, property and estates. There was a 72 kind of estimated overspend, and the same with operations, general, economy and environmental services. I just wondered what accounts for those two slight overspend, but in recognition that we're well within budget anyway.
Could I ask Andy to comment on that?
You can. The property one is largely expenditure on our building, so particularly the conservatory on the council house has quite a bit of work done to it. But it won't be one overall thing. It will be a number of items, but largely expenditure on our buildings. On operations general, from memory, again, that is expenditure related to the new depot site that we've acquired, hopefully to carry out food waste from.
Thanks, Andy.
Seven. So if we go through this, the elements of this are strategic aspects of the South Worcestershire Development, SWDPR, an examination on the 4th of September it was an additional examination from the March-April hearings that were earlier this year. The current position, as we understand it, is Inspector's interim statement is likely to be legally compliant and sound. Parkway and Rushwick allocations have been confirmed as valid. Throckmorton, however, has been removed and is made an area of search. Employment land is deemed sufficient, and 40% of affordable housing and on greenfield and 30% on brownfield sites. On the social rented ownership split, there's a 70-30 split on that. And the comment that we got here is that the Gypsy Traveller is effectively addressed through no development plan document is required. There are significant gaps and a stand-alone policy has been requested to protect settlement separation and openness. So overall, I think on track for adoption at the end of the year. So that's, I think, where we sit with that. The business plan has identified savings to be made and actions to achieve these next year. 2 years look is okay, and there remains a significant savings to be found after that. The unemployment level is steady at I think 2.4%, and that's about half the level, the national level. I think I saw the other day that was 4.7% at the unemployment level, so we're at half the level, and there's effectively very little change year on from last year, so it's a pretty steady figure for Malvern Hills. On services, the overall performance is on track. And our red, amber, green, we've got 16 green, 1 amber, 1 red. I think this time last year we had 3 amber and 1 red, and the rest were green. So there's been an improvement in terms of the RAG scores. The housing benefits and council tax support claims have exceeded the annual targets, and planning application determinations comfortably exceeding national and stretch targets. So the development team has performed exceptionally well, and we'd like to thank them for their dedication and congratulate them for winning the Planning Authority of the Year award, having made significant turnaround to the problems that we had about it, well, over a year ago now, a year and a bit, in planning. We've staffed the planning better, and they've actually started to catch up with the things that were behind. So well done to the whole team. Homelessness preventions, are 95% approaches. Staff sickness has improved with assistance from interventions. And this is something that came up, it's come up every year since I've been here, is there's always been a staff sickness issue. And we know that part of that, or a good bulk of that, is long-term illness skewing the figures. And that is the amber element of the red, amber-green scoring. The solitary red is the validation of planning applications, which actually needs addressing. And I think the idea, is to look at some possible process changes to see if there's something in the process that can help improve on that. 5-year plan is all on track, and there's good progress being made. We've got the Communities Facilities Legacy Grant. I think we're going to hear a bit more about that under item 8 today. There's 70, I think, applications on that, and this has been to the panel where it's received good recommendations coming forward. The Levelling Up Theatre project is progressing, but as of recently, the final contract has not yet been placed, and discussion is ongoing with the hope that this can be sorted out by the end of this month. Malvern Town Football Club has, and Malvern Rugby Club changing rooms. There's work that we've initiated, and they're both nearing completion. The Rugby Club may actually be completed at the moment. And the Malvern Town Football Club, as I understand it, is due for completion at the beginning of next month. Yeah. So that should transform both those areas, and I think it's a great change and a great benefit to the community for both of those developments. The Rural Fund, there's a 507,000 fund, and we're ready for appraisal on that, so that's about to go ahead. So that concludes on that item. If there's any questions, comments, input, Bill.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got a comment and a question. Under item 4, strategic issues and risks, and 4.1, SWDPR, those of us who sit on JAP, and we had JAP last week, will be aware that there is still a bit of concern that the inspectors are concerned about our housing land supply figure. And even though we had the developers at the inquiry saying that they could build and would meet that target, it seemed that the inspectors were still not 100% sure. And I know that Ian McLeod has been frustrated, shall we say, by it. So I think we've got to watch this space really, because I'm not sure it's all completely rosy at the moment. So I'm hoping that at some point soon we might get an update from Ian. But the developers were there. The developers have written to the inspectors. It's all on the public site, but it still seemed that the inspectors were not 100% convinced, which is a bit of a worry. So that's just a comment. On 5.4, I think it is, on performance, validation comes up again. And I'm just wondering why that is still an issue. I understood that there were measures being put in place to get the validation sorted. So is that just a backlog again, or are we short of staff, or what's the issue with that? So if somebody can answer that, that would be great. Thank you.
I'm not exactly sure what the issues are, but I do know that Ian is intending to look into it and to, you know, put in place measures to improve that. What I would say is, and I don't want to say it's not important, but the bigger picture is still green. So the total time to process applications, despite this validation element of the process taking longer than we would like, is still green. So customers aren't being disadvantaged by that, although it would help if we could improve that part of the system and reduce the pressure on the rest of the system to still keep it on target. So I don't know exactly what the problem is. David might know a bit more, or Dean, but I do know that Ian intends to look at it very shortly.
This is obviously tricky. I know that we have been and changed a lot of the sort of various performance and moving staff around and what have you, and got most of them into the green on this. But we obviously still got this one on the red validation. This is very difficult because we don't really know how it's measured nationally. But I'll just give you an example. One of our developers, large one, on the 1st of this month submitted a large application. It's for several thousand houses and it's within the Malvern Hills district. That should help you a little bit thinking about it. Unfortunately, it has not yet been validated because they also have to submit a similar application to Wychavon, because some of the properties within and the development is within Wychavon, and they failed to do this. So of course it's in the system, but it's been there 16 days so far, and obviously it hasn't been validated because it hasn't been validated or sent over to Wychavon. So until the developer sends it to Wychavon, it'll be stuck in our system as one of ours that hasn't been validated. And there are a lot of these where the developers do not supply all the information that they're supposed to supply. And I'm glad to see that Vic was nodding his head then, so he knows all about this as well. And it's annoying really, because if you miss out a BNG report and what have you, it can't be validated. If you miss out an archaeological report or it's more than 2 years old, no, not the archaeological, the tree report is more than 2 years old, then it can't be validated because it has to be within the last 2 years. So we're aiming to get the documentation on the website completely up to date. There's 1 or 2 items that are still not quite up to date, but they would not have affected this because the applicants know that a report is only valid for 2 years. So I don't worry about this at all. And I praise the staff for what they've done. I think they've done a fabulous job. They've turned around a lot of these that were in the red, and now there's only this one, and I'm sure that will be disappearing certainly this year. Pretty certain it'll be this year.
Just an observation, a quick question really. It was great to see that 230,000 was secured in the public sector decarbonisation grant. I know Matt, our climate officer, was looking at that, so congratulations, I'm assuming, to Matt and the rest of the team for getting that. Quick question, I noticed that covers the council house, so this is to replace gas and install, is it air source or ground source heat pump, one or the other, at both the depot and the council house. Does that include the new food waste depot, or is that just the existing depot? Do we know that at all?
Andy, can you come on that?
Just the existing depot. Okay, we also bid for the theatre, but that was turned down.
Yeah, thanks. So generally speaking, I'm really pleased to see no real changes or surprises or emerging concerns, especially because we are, LGR is pretty much all consuming. So I would like to say thank you to all the officers. I've got a quick question because of my lack of understanding on phraseology, I suppose, but in the report about strategic issues and risks, Jules has mentioned Throckmorton. It's been, or I think you did, John, or somebody did. It's been removed and recategorised as an area of search, and I don't know what that means. And so I wanted to know what that means, if that's okay. And then just a quick further question in relation to land supply. What's happening with Newland? Not a spade's gone in the ground, as far as I'm aware. So surely that's going to be out of time as an application soon, which is very concerning given our position on housing land supply. So just two questions there, please.
Okay, area of search, David, you can.
Yeah, really what it is that the inspectors didn't believe that this would come forward in the 5 years that we're doing it, doing the plan. So it's been put back for the next plan to come forward in that. So that's why they called it an area of search, because we've got to go out and search for more planning areas in 5 years' time, or for the plan in 5 years' time, the next plan, to make up the numbers, and Throckmorton will be in that.
Newland?
Newland, yes, Newland. Very interesting. Comes up in my correspondence quite often. Newland is a Welbeck site, as you may know, and they are planners, but they are not developers. So it's obviously going to be sold at some stage. I don't know who to and what have you. I haven't heard any rumours. I do know that Worcester South has been sold. So that is why that is coming forward. I really don't know why that hasn't been progressed either. So I'll apologise for that. But I don't know, but I'll find out for you.
I don't think it's you that needs to apologise, David. I just do worry about the fact that permission is given and obviously people sit on the land, and I don't know if this is going to have to go through the whole process because I'm not a planning expert, but does the planning permission that stands already, will that be able to be carried forward if it's sold on again, or does it need to come back to committee, or what happens with that piece of land, and how long is it likely to drag on for, I suppose, is the question.
It's again, it's interesting. I don't know whether any of the conditions on the planning application have been approved. If there are, I know there's many of them, and there's 50 odd in the Worcester South one, and one of those conditions was approved, which meant that the whole application is approved and doesn't have to go through the same process again. If that is the same case, and I've got a feeling that it may be, because I think something to do with the access for the Worcester Highways land has been approved, and I believe that is going ahead, but I'm not 100% certain, I'm afraid. But if it is, then that'll be a benefit, because it'll save a lot of, well, it'll save them lots and lots of pennies as well, because they'll have to come in and they'll have to pay.
Okay, can I come back to this area of search? I think the wording in the report is to be removed. Throckmorton, that strategic allocation is to be removed and made an area of search. Now, from what you've said, does that mean that after 5 years, this removal, it moves back in again, or potentially moves back in again, and it's not actually removed, it's just deferred?
I've never heard that statement about being removed from a plan before on anything, unless it's actually kicked completely into touch and not permitted at all. As far as I am aware, this will be coming back and being put forward by the applicants, because they haven't signed the 106 yet, so the ownership and what have you hasn't all been agreed. So this is part of the sort of problem. They've got to agree the sort of ownership and who's in charge and who's doing what and what have you before they can sort of pass it on to developers to actually do it. So really that's the reason, at least with the Worcester South one, the whole of the area, they had signed and sealed Section 106 approvals and everything to do with that. This, as far as I'm aware, as I stated, I believe that it will be coming back in for the next plan, and I believe that'll be as soon as this one's done, if I am correct, that the next plan will have to go out for allocations. Vic might be able to answer some more, I don't know.
No, I think you said as much as I know, David, so nothing to add to that.
Okay, any other quick? Natalie, bye.
Unless anyone else has got questions, I certainly don't want to monopolise the conversation, but I've got 4 questions on the council plan. Should I do them 2 at a time, or how should I? 1 at a time. Okay. So the first question is about recovery from financial hardship, and I know that for some time now we've been looking at our food offer to ensure that there's something available on an emergency basis 7 days a week. I'm just wondering if we can have an update as to where we are with that food offer, please.
Good. Okay.
Yep, so I haven't got a precise update for you this evening, but happy to have a conversation with officers and feed that back following this meeting. What I would say is that the local food forum is still meeting on a regular basis to have that conversation, so I'll get the latest position from them.
Question 2, homelessness prevention. So we're due the results of the temporary accommodation review. So just wondering when that's going to be and whether pods and modular homes are going to feed into the solution.
Thank you. Yes, we are due that, I believe, in November. I'm just twisting my head. Yeah, November exec. And I believe PDP might be taking a look at that beforehand. So Nat, you personally may get to see that first. And absolutely, there'll be a full review of all opportunities, including modular, which I'm very keen on.
That's great news, thanks. Moving on to the arts. Sorry, it's quite focused on you, Jen, I think, today. Both Jens, actually. So I'm really pleased to read that we're continuing to fund the arts officer. But they're hosted, I think, or funded or employed by kind of Seven Arts. So I'm wondering whether if match funding from elsewhere, another organisation, doesn't materialise, will we still be committed to funding that post, and would it have an impact on that post? Say, for example, another authority pulled out of its usual funding commitment for Seven Arts, where would that leave that post?
I think I'll allow to Jen, who probably knows more about that. I think just in principle, we obviously absolutely want to support that role to continue. Another matter that we bring in before exec in due course is some further discussions and hopefully a report around place-based budgeting that looks to support some of our community organisations in the different areas and sectors they work in, in light of local government reorganisation, what we can do to make sure that they are sustainable for the future once we've gone. So just to add that point, but I'll ask Jen if that's okay. I can't look round, my neck's stiff.
No problem, that's okay. Yeah, I think obviously the arts coordinator role is based with Seven Arts because it makes sense that they are based within that that network and that system rather than within the local authority. But should there be any risk, and I'm not aware of any, but should there be any risk to that organisation, we would, of course, it wouldn't necessarily mean the end of our funding for that post. That post is still part of our council plan, and therefore we would work either to bring that person back in-house or to find an alternative host. So I think that would be the position we would be taking at this stage.
Great, last one. I don't know if Ian's here or not. Can't see him. It was a question about EPR, so the extended producer responsibility. I think we're getting our government funding in the autumn, a bit later on in the autumn. Over £1 million, have we, or have we had it already?
Notification of it. I don't know whether we've actually received the cap or not.
I think it was in 2 tranches. It wasn't over £1 million though. It was about, from memory, 769,000.
Oh, okay. Well, you know me and maths. It was near enough. But the question is, have we decided what that is going to be used for yet?
It would form part of this year's budget. So the budget we all voted on in February, or you all voted on in February, not me, included that 769. So it was within the budget, and it's helped fund the priorities, including the report that's on after this.
Okay, so it's not specifically ring fenced for education around recycling, for example, or investment into Envirosaur or anything like that. Is it? It can be just sort of consumed by a general pot.
Yes.
Anyone else? Any comments? Questions? No? Okay, the recommendations for this are the achievements and improvements in performance be noted, the strategic issues raised in section 4 be considered, which we've done. And the executive committee thanks staff for the outcome of their efforts. I think we're all in agreement with that. This is actually quite a good increase or improvement in performance, or a notable. There's more to do, obviously, but only a small amount. To make everything green would be great. So thank you the staff for the improvements that have happened. Next item 8 is the Community Facility Legacy Grant Scheme, and I think Jenny's going to take us through that.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members and officers. Yeah, I'm really pleased to present this report on the Community Facility Legacy Grant Scheme. And before I open it, there are a few things that I'd like to say just to frame our conversation. I first wish to put on record my big thanks and gratitude to Mark, Evie, and all of the community's team who have done a significant amount of work and put in effort, committed to this project, probably when they had a million other things they needed to be doing. It seems like we've been talking about this for a while, but in fact we haven't. It's only been a matter of months since exec approved the fund and we put out for an expression of interest, and please don't underestimate the amount of effort that's gone in there. So I'm sure you'll all join me in thanking them. But also to thank members who've positively contributed to the process so far, including those that are on the Policy and Development Panel, the PDP, who have reviewed this report and endorsed it before it came here this evening. So it's certain to say that the council has supported some really amazing community initiatives and done some fantastic work with our communities over the years. And I think this really builds upon that momentum, that feedback that we heard when we had our peer review. And this scheme actually represents one of the most significant investments that we'll have made in recent years to support our local communities. So following an overwhelming response, you'll see that we had 70 applications from across 15 wards, which is brilliant, because I know that some of the concern members had is that we may not get a good geographical spread, but I'm sure you can see that we certainly did. And I'm delighted that we are recommending approval from yourselves for financial support for 48 projects, which are both eligible and deliverable. So together, you'll see it's over £3 million invested if this is approved this evening, combining council funding, Section 106 and SIL reserves, and importantly, more than 1.15 million of match funding secured by applicants themselves. I'm sure you'll see there's some amazing projects put forward by our communities, all of which will directly improve community halls, sports facilities, open spaces and environmental sustainability across Malvern Hills. And importantly, they'll ensure that our residents have access to more inclusive, accessible and financially sustainable community hubs for wellbeing, leaving that real lasting legacy. And if you remember, we discussed with the changing times ahead of us with local government reorganisation in creating this fund, it was our aim to ensure that we invested some of those rainy day funds, and thanks to Andy for agreeing, we had reserved back into our communities so that they across the district could benefit for a lot longer after we are no longer here, which sounds a bit morbid, but the reality. As you mentioned earlier, Leader, we took a recent visit to Malvern Town Football Club, the project that kick-started this fund, to see those works underway. And, you know, you can already see the physical accessibility and positivity that will bring, and the many conversations that we had with people about the club's growing future. So just to be clear, the committee are asked to approve the allocation of the £1 million from the Legacy Grant Scheme to fund the selected supported projects. to approve the allocation of 215,000 from SIL reserves towards Holt Village Hall redevelopment, and details of that are in the report, and to note the allocation of around 683,000 from Section 106 and other existing budgets, which allow us to extend the reach and impact of this scheme. There will, of course, be some communities who may be disappointed with the outcome of their application, but I just want to reassure members that we will continue to work with them to assure we align with any other funders and support them to achieve their ambitions. We always recognise that some projects would be more shovel ready than others, and there'll be some work to do. And of course, exec may be minded to bring forward, or ask us to bring forward, further thoughts for a phase 2 in the future. So, Chair, I commend the report to committee for approval and look forward to any questions or comments. And I think, without turning, have a team behind me to answer any of the technical detail.
Thank you, Jenny. Beverly.
I'd just like to say I'm very happy to second the report and the recommendations, and to congratulate Jenny and Jen and the team and Mark on all the hard work that went into approving the 48, and of course the PDP, to echo your thoughts on your policy development panel as well. I think it really is a fantastic project. I'm delighted to see the amount of funding that has been agreed in those 48 projects across the 15 wards. And I'm particularly interested, if I could ask a question as well as approving the recommendation, in your hint at a sort of phase 2 of possible funding applications, as opposed to monitoring the ongoing results of these successful funding bids. And wondered, what your thinking is, if you were able to say anything at this early stage to us about that.
Thank you, Beverly, and thank you for your support and agreeing to second, which I had failed to ask. I think we need to reflect on the applications that we've received, and maybe Mark might have some further thoughts, but there'll certainly be some learning from us to take forward, both from the applications that we received, but also how that process worked for communities or not, before I could bring something forward. I've mentioned earlier, we're quite keen to look at the financial sustainability of some of those core organisations across the district, to want to make sure that they can continue to do the work, at least during that transition period into whatever the new authority looks like. And of course, members will probably have some thoughts around what they know is happening in their communities, what those concerns are, and also what the gaps are. So whether that's revenue or capital, I'd be very keen to develop a phase 2, whatever that should look like, and subject to Andy allowing us to do so and telling us that we have some funds to do so. So I think it's, if that helps, it's rather a broad response, but I think, I would certainly be keen, knowing that if we've got the ability to create even more of a legacy, that we should look to do that.
Thank you very much, Jenny. I'm really thrilled to hear that you're keen in principle. And of course, I recognise that alongside Andy's approval, Council will also need to approve, and clearly it'll be a member decision. But also just to sort of note your comment, I'd like to particularly note your comment about the Malvern Town Football Club being one of the schemes that kicked off, no pun intended, your thinking on this particular approach to funding community applications and a legacy approach for the council. And I'm also thrilled that associated with that, the success of Malvern Rugby Club, and I've visited the changing rooms and they look superb, and the environmental improvements as well make a huge difference there. So from very close to my heart, in particular, are those two schemes, and I know other councillors will have schemes particularly close to their hearts in their areas. So all in all, many congratulations and thanks.
Mark.
Yeah, really just to congratulate the team. There's obviously, I know from being an evaluator on funding projects myself, more EU-based projects than local-based projects, how much work this takes, just one application. So congratulations to the team for both the coverage and I think the diversity of awards here, which I'm sure will make a really significant difference to those communities that benefit. I suppose I have two questions. Likewise, I would love to see lessons learned from this and the potential to roll forward a phase 2, particularly given we've just heard that our investment income is significantly higher than we envisaged. I suppose as a question, given that inevitably there'll be a number of rejections, my question is whether time and effort will also be given to those communities that were unsuccessful this time in providing, you know, detailed feedback and potential support if another community fund does arise in the future. So, yeah, that's the kind of first question. Number 2, in terms of long-term legacy and monitoring long-term impact of investment for these, is money set aside certainly for the lifetime of, you know, the rest of the district council to monitor the more long-term impacts and long-term benefits of the money invested into these community projects? So there's kind of 2 supplementary questions to my support here.
Leader, if I may, I'm going to ask Mark, because I kind of feel like he deserves the opportunity to share some of the great work he's been doing, I know, preparing for the conversations that we'll be having and the work we've been doing, and refer back to me if there's any other points that you want me to cover, Mark.
Thank you. Yeah, I think in terms of the unsuccessfuls, that's probably been quite unique in terms of how we're approaching this. I think they're just as important as the successful applicants. So Evie and myself actually met with the National Lottery last week, along with the Active Partnership, along with Public Health. And that discussion was very much about what other funding opportunities are available, and also how can we best support some of those applicants. The Active Partnership, for instance, are working to develop a bid writing workshop. So some of these applicants will be signposted to that. Some of the applicants, it is simply timing. They won't be able to deliver their project within our initial timeframes. Their projects are very sound, potentially would fit nicely in a round 2. But we will be spending a lot of time with those rejected applicants to make sure they're in the best position moving forward. And of course, there will be other funding opportunities for them, as I say, maybe through National Lottery, maybe through Sport England, Awards for All. So Evie, myself and other colleagues will happily support those communities and signpost and handhold those communities if they want that support. Sorry, there was a second question. Forgive me. What?
It was about monitoring the long-term, more kind of medium to long-term impact, if you like, beyond just getting the building refurbished.
Absolutely. I mean, the long-term impact is something that in community services we do pride ourselves on in terms of that community impact, the storytelling, and we'll be working with those communities. I think in terms of some of the successful applicants who perhaps run community facilities, village halls, we've got a resource that we're looking to support those communities with. So supporting them with bleed kits, supporting them with DFIBs, active travel plans, connecting them with other services to make sure that those community facilities become a real integrated hub for their community. So we'll be parachuting resource in to support those facilities as well. And part of that is that impact reporting, that assessment, that analysis of the impact they're having, and also identifying other opportunities to connect with wider services.
Mark, I think you people bodies who've applied for this, they didn't meet the criteria. I think you've actually provided some assistance to them by sort of pointing them in the direction where they might get support, although they didn't meet the particular requirements. So if that's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, that we have to some degree, but obviously a lot of it was very dependent on the decision tonight. So now we've had the decision tonight, or pending the decision tonight, should I say? I don't want to preempt. We will be contacting all 70 applicants as of sort of tomorrow, next couple of days, and we'll be really focusing on the support they need. Obviously, the applicants who we're recommending for approval, we'll take them through the compliance stage to make sure that if they've said they got planning permission, actually prove it, provide evidence, prove that you're the landowner, provide confirmation that you got your match funding. So we'll be going through that sort of due diligence and making sure that the applications are ready to go prior to us releasing that grant funding.
Oh, well done on that, because that's beyond what the aim was to providing additional support into the community. So well done for that.
Thank you.
Dean.
I'm off after this meeting to Holt Village Hall committee meeting, which is being held in the Red Lion, because they've had to condemn the village hall. So they had actually 250,000 towards their new village hall from a local, somebody died, left a bequest to a local charity. They would have lost that 250,000 if we hadn't been giving them the money that I hope we'll be going to decide to give them tonight. So literally, we virtually doubled the value of the money that we're giving them. My absolute congratulations to the team. I will say, for once in this council, I think all the time I've been on this council, we've been firefighting. And really, this is actually, strangely enough, as we go out, we're actually doing a lot of positive things, which hopefully will have an enduring legacy.
Thank you, Dean. Natalie.
Yeah, I did have questions, but they've pretty much already been asked, and I have been up to speed with this. I've been involved right from the start, really, from the sort of PDP and stuff. So I think I heard that Mark said that within the next couple of days he'll be contacting successful and unsuccessful people. But obviously, those who know how local government work will know that these are public papers in the agenda pack, so they will probably have read for themselves. But never mind, that's just the timing of things. So no, just well done to everybody. And I know that there are a few I's to dot and T's to cross before the funding can be released, and rightly so, because you have to do due diligence. But can you remind me, please, when the funding can expect to be received once all of that has been done? Because I've forgotten when the projects actually have to start. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Our initial cut-off is end of March, but again, we'll be working very closely with all applicants. So if they come back to us and require a few weeks, an extra month, we will consider that. Obviously, with what's going on in local government review and considering the risks of extending those projects. But my expectation is that if some of the projects need slightly longer, maybe because they're going through planning or it's a big project and they're going through a larger procurement exercise, we'll work with those organisations. We certainly haven't got a hard and fast cut-off date for them, but the end of March is our indicative target to get the majority of our projects out and get the funding released so the projects can commence.
Okay, no further. So we've got now to vote on 2.1 and 2.2 and note on 2.3.
All those in favour? That's unanimous.
Next item 9 is 41 Geraldine Road. And David's going to take us on that.
Yes, an interesting item on the agenda. The property and the landowner is Worcestershire County Council, and they can't make decisions on themselves. I wish they could sometimes, but they can't, and other times I'm glad they can't. But in this particular instance, the sort of section 106 and everything else has got to be done by an outside body. So we have represented Worcestershire County Council doing this before, so they asked us if we could do it again. It was very time critical. So the chief executive, along with myself, and I think Ian had a say in it as well, if I remember right. Ian McLeod. And our chairman here as well, I think, was in one of those. And it was decided, yes, we would do that, and that has been done. So this is just really for noting, because it's all been done, or most of it's been done. Misha will probably update if there's anything else on that. No update. Fine. So it's just a case of noting it.
David.
Yes, it is rather urgent as they're planning to actually start work next week. But this seems to have been an issue all along with this site and the relationship between Worcestershire County Council and the builders and everybody else. So yes, thank you for getting it sorted.
I suppose I'm just wondering why this is only coming up now when we've had the planning decision made, you know, months ago, and it twice came back to committee, didn't it? And I don't think this was because it was overdevelopment the first time, so refused, and I think it's come back and then approved. But this issue wasn't. I don't remember it being brought up at the time, so I'm just wondering why that might have been.
Don't know. County council normally, you know, they'll normally ask us at a really early stage. I'm assuming it was just an oversight that came out at the end, and we were asked to make a quick decision, which is why we couldn't go back.
I mean, it's quite a vital decision, really, because there's a lack of school sufficiency, you know, places across the county, and that was an educational facility. So, you know, I just think that it might have been helpful to know, because it probably, in my view, it would be better kept as an educational facility. But yeah, we didn't know, so we couldn't make any other decision, could we? So there we are.
Item 10, primate keeper licensing. I think David is doing that as well.
Yeah. No comment. Not me. Interesting. This is a national thing that's coming off. New legislation across the whole country. Licenses will be valid for 3 years, and it will become, as it says in 3.12, an offence to keep a primate without a licence from the 6th of April 2026. So we've got a bit of time to sort this out. The costs are as shown on paragraph 3.26. And Niall is here to talk on it.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, members. Yes, thank you for the introduction. So the purpose of this report is for the committee to note the important amendment to the Animal Welfare Act 2006 with the introduction of the primate regulations in 2024. As pointed out by Councillor Harrison, this is new. Government were looking at the abolition of keeping primates back in 2019. However, I think it didn't happen, and therefore they had to introduce some legislation for any persons who keep primates in the UK. The new regulations establish a licensing regime for those individuals who keep primates, and as mentioned, it will be from April 2026. So from that date onwards, it will be a criminal offence to have a primate without a valid licence, unless that animal is housed in a zoo or scientific facility approved under separate legislation. So we are the licensing authority. It will be the responsibility of Malvern Hills District Council to licence owners. So we have to get in place the process for applications. We have to conduct inspections, and we will be enforcing compliance with the regulations. There are a list of fees now highlighted in the report for approval, based on cost recovery and set in line with current animal activity licenses, because we already administer animal activity licensings in relation to riding establishments, dog breeding, all of those sort of activities that are taking place. So a bit of background, the RSPCA estimates that there are up to 5,000 primates being kept in the UK in private ownership. Interestingly, the majority of those would need a dangerous wild animals licence, but I think a recent report said that there are probably only 250 dangerous wild animal licences issued, again in the UK. So I think the information that we have is pretty limited. So there's going to be some investigation work to find out where these animals are, because no doubt they're going to be kept in some of the districts that we have at the moment. Just to let you know, we haven't got any dangerous wild animal licences issued for primates at the moment, so there are none being kept within Worcestershire. They are intelligent animals and they're emotionally complex. Their welfare needs are extremely difficult to meet in domestic settings, and main concerns being social isolation. There was a lot of lobbying in relation to primates being kept in social groups to ensure that they can function normally. The concerns around early weaning, inadequate housing and poor nutrition. Some of the implementation details that are relevant. So applications must be made by persons who are over 18 and not disqualified under relevant legislation, so other animal welfare legislation. It's our role to appoint qualified inspectors to assess premises, and we're currently doing that. We're arranging for specialist training to take place with our officers who are already fully qualified under the animal activity regulations. So we'll see it as an add-on to those functions, which again, that training was very detailed, took over 2 years, and we have 4 officers currently trained under that. Licenses typically last for 3 years, and the conditions that are attached to those licenses are listed in the Schedule 1 of the regulations. And statutory guidance was very recently issued for local authorities back in July. Enforcement, so failure to meet the licensing conditions is an offence, as we've already mentioned, and it is punishable by an unlimited fine. So it shows the government's sort of commitment to enforcing the regs when they introduce such hefty penalties. We are in a position to issue rectification notices, and we can revoke licenses or vary them if necessary. So what are the next steps? We have a holding page already on the council's website, which gives basic information about the scheme, and it redirects to the WRS website, where we'll have more detailed information and information on how to apply for a licence. We're currently working on application forms and back office systems ready in preparation to be able to accept those applications. We're also working with local veterinary practices to try and identify anybody who actually has a primate currently. So they're not obliged to give us that information, but we'd like to think that they would take their responsibilities seriously and support the council in identifying those people that will need a licence to ensure that we can inspect those premises and make sure that those animals are being looked after appropriately. That's really all I have to say at this stage. I'm open to questions. I mean, the recommendations are for members to note, obviously, the information in the report and also approve the fees that will go alongside the regime. Thank you.
Mark, then.
Thanks. Thanks, Niall. This is quite a difficult one, really, isn't it? In my view, the keeping of primates, our closest cousins, as a pet is abhorrent, and there should be a, national ban. I know most of the main parties supported a national ban, and that should be, the course of action, in my view, going forward. No primates should be kept in captivity except for exceptional wildlife conservation breeding reasons, in my view. Having said all that, the welfare of those animals that do exist has to be our top priority. So better some system of checks rather than none. You know, I'm really conflicted about this. I think to register my objection, I'm just going to abstain here, basically to put my kind of values, or just to register my values that I just don't approve of any private holding of primates, but recognising that some system of checks is better than no system of checks. I think that's all I have to say.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to thank David for the presentation of this report, and also Niall for joining us from WRS this evening, and particularly for your full explanation of this new legislation and licensing system. I do tend to agree that it is a very unpleasant idea that a primate would be kept in a private household, and so I do find that a fairly unpleasant and intolerable, I guess, idea. But I have to say I very much welcome the idea that there will be some licensing and some control where it does exist. And I did have a question for you, Niall, and wondered, of the 5,000 primates, and given that you said we don't have any dangerous animal licenses issued in Worcestershire, do you believe that there are any primates in private ownership in Worcestershire? I was going to ask, you know, do you think we've got any monkeys in Worcestershire? But I don't want to introduce a flippant tone to the conversation. So,
as I said, we're not aware of any.
yeah.
But the figures that are being quoted would sort of indicate that there more than likely is,
Yes.
considering there are 300 and odd local authorities, yet 500 animals in private ownership. I mean, the odds are that within Worcestershire that there may be one or two individuals that have these in their possession. We did have a capuchin monkey in ownership up in the Wyre Forest area. However, that was kept under a dangerous wild animal for a number of years, certainly long before I came along. I think the gentleman had it for nearly 30 years, this individual monkey. However, that passed away. So they are out there, is what I will say. But it's really, hopefully, with some publicity and communication and comms, we'll be able to encourage neighbours to let us know. You know, if people aren't coming forward to get licensed, then hopefully other people will be able to just inform us where they are.
Thank you so much for that answer, Niall. I'm very pleased to hear you mention communications, because I think that is one of the key queries I would have about what is the investment plan to communicate and raise the profile of this issue, so we can get vets and private individuals to raise the profile of where these animals might be, so that we can at least try and ensure their most comfortable life for the few that we might have in Worcestershire. And the only other thing I would like to add, Chair, is that if David needs a seconder for the recommendation, I'm happy to second this report. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really unhappy, and actually I'm quite annoyed that the government have actually decided to backtrack on their original manifesto commitment. Because, as others have said, it's, in my view, it's highly inappropriate to be owning a primate. Probably like me, you will remember squirrel monkeys dressed in children's clothes on Blackpool Prom. You'll remember the chimps having a tea party on the television. And even then, when I was a child, I knew that the exploitation of such intelligent animals was wrong. And the report states that they're highly intelligent, long-lived. We've just heard that a capuchin monkey lived to 30 years in captivity. They've got intricate social relationships with each other, and they experience emotions and suffer in a similar way to humans. And when they're kept as pets, they can experience serious suffering, and Niall's already articulated those. And actually, I seem to remember a horrific case recently in Worcestershire that I'm not going to go into details about, because it is actually horrific. So there are people that own primates in this county. But it's way too distressing. If you want to be really upset tonight, then look it up. But There's clear public support for a ban on keeping, breeding, acquiring, gifting or selling primates, with 98.7 respondents articulating that view. I think we'd be proud of a response rate like that, wouldn't we, if we were putting out a questionnaire about it. But yet again, the government haven't listened and they've made a U-turn on this really vital issue. I have got some questions and rant over now, but as you can tell, I'm really quite upset by this. Animal welfare is something that I've spent a lot of my life focusing on. So it hurts a bit. So I think it states in the report that the first stage of licensing would be implemented in April 2025. So has that happened as planned? I'm concerned about how we're ever going to know how many primates there are. I can't see neighbours telling us that their neighbours have got a primate. And I think that actually, if government was serious, then vets should have a legal duty to tell local authorities. If we're the licensing organisation, then vets should be communicating that with us if they know that people have got primates. I think I read that it could take 2 years to revoke a licence and remove a primate, which is referred to as a rectification notice. If I've read that right, and I might not have done, that's way too long, because these primates could be suffering during that time. So in my view, that's the process is just inappropriate. It's around the timeframes and the variation of the licences, and I've already said that people should be banned from keeping primates. I would like to know what we as an organisation can do to articulate some of our thoughts about this. I know that I'm not speaking on behalf of everybody, but I certainly have strong feelings, and I know others in this room do too. But for the reasons that I have outlined, predominantly the welfare of animals, I'm going to be abstaining tonight. Thank you.
Niall, do you want to come back and answer?
Yes, certainly. Certainly with regards to the first stage, obviously we need to get the scheme implemented within Malvern Hills. As we say, we're not aware of any persons who have primates currently within Malvern Hills. We haven't got any information to state that there are anybody. So we're still in a position to accept those applications. We have been since April. With regards to animal welfare, we, again, you know, as an organisation, we do take it very seriously. And if it is identified that any animals are being mistreated, we will liaise very closely with the RSPCA, and we will also have powers to remove those animals. I mean, it talks about rectification of licences, but of course, if there is undue suffering to animals, there is also other legislation available to assist and then take those animals out of a person's possession if they're not looking after them properly. So that is there, and that is already available to us.
Can I just briefly come back then? I didn't read that, so maybe I missed it, but is it included in the report that there are further steps that can be taken when it's the welfare of animals that is concerned? I didn't read it, Niall, sorry.
It isn't in the report, so you wouldn't have read it. So the idea with this is just really to refer to the licensing scheme. That animal welfare generally is just, it's there in legislation for all animals, not just primates. So yes, it probably could have been included in the report, but at this stage it probably didn't feel it appropriate, certainly because it is there anyway.
Just for my understanding, I was reading the officer inspection fee, and I was imagining that was looking at the quality of living or the welfare of the animal in whatever place or house or whatever it was, wherever they were housed. Is that not correct? Is that a separate thing then entirely?
No, that's exactly what it is. So the idea being that those who've already got primates, and we haven't got any information, so they should already have a dangerous wild animal licence in place. So we would be aware of it, and we'd be able to engage with them directly and go and inspect in line with the regulations and the guidance issued to local authorities. So any new ones, they shouldn't acquire the animal until they have suitable facilities to house them. I mean, they are legally allowed to purchase sort of primates and apply for a license, and the inspection will ensure that any habitat is suitable for that individual animal.
And if they find out it's not suitable, the RSPC are called in to remove the animal. And where does the animal go from that point of view?
There are other organisations out there to house animals that certainly the RSPCA have links with other organisations. We have contacts with other organisations. With other areas of work, so sort of specialist reptiles, for example, snakes. We've actually executed warrants on a particular premises and, you know, taken those animals out, and they've been sent off to. It's difficult to explain the type of organisation they are, but they look after the animals and look after their welfare, and then rehouse them appropriately in either private collections or in zoos or farm parks.
Okay, thanks, Niall. And Beverly, you want to come back?
Yeah, sorry, Niall, would you mind just saying a few words about how this will be communicated, which I sort of asked about earlier, and I am conscious of the point that Councillor McVeigh made about the dreadful torture of the macaque monkeys. All I would say is that that was a terrible incident, and those monkeys were not actually in this county. The individuals support, you could say, encouraging, promoting that dreadful torture were. So the monitoring is very important here, given those kind of individuals that sadly exist in our society.
Yes, we haven't communicated throughout the other districts. So this report has been presented to, well, it has now been presented to all 6 district councils within Worcestershire, all of which have approved the fees and approved the licensing scheme. So there is going to be full communication or a comms press release so that people are aware of the legislation. It seems to have come in fairly quietly, considering the regulations were actually approved back in July 2024. And certainly within our circles we were all aware of it, but it doesn't seem to be made more publicly on public news channels or social media. So we'll certainly ensure and work with our comms teams and the individual district comms teams to ensure that the message gets out there.
David, you're coming back into.
I'm going to come back in. Well, we haven't made any recommendations yet, which I deliberately didn't want to do. Just to answer, there was another question in there that this mentioned starting in 2025 and 2026. 2025 was when it had to be set up so that the people were able to, or it took effect from April 2025 for this registration. And I'm very pleased to see that Worcester Regulatory Services, as usual, are well in front, because it has been done. It is there. If you want to go on and find out, you'll find it. I'm pleased that it's in all 6 counties, or sorry, all 6 councils, and what have you. And it is a very, very tricky subject. The fees that are there will help to recover of the costs, or most of the costs, and then they can be reviewed anyway, as what I understand from this particular paper. And of course, it will become an offence to keep a primate in England without a licence from the 6th of April 2026, which is what it says there. So it isn't perfect. It's a good start. And I hope that when we get to April 2026 next year and what have you, we will probably get a small report from Niall as to how many people have licenses in these areas dealt with by Worcester Regulatory Services, because I think it'll be very interesting. So I'm happy to to recommend 2.1 and the costs as shown in 2.2. And I got a seconder, I think, from Beverly.
All those in favour? All those against? And all those abstaining? That vote is carried.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Item 11, a statement of licensing policy review, and I think David, that's your.
Yeah, it's my day today, isn't it?
Yeah.
Again, Niall is here, which is very useful. as the principal licensing officer. This is to do with licensing and what have you. Our recommendation is to approve the draft revised statement of licensing shown at Appendix 1 for the purpose of a 4-week consultation. I've had a good read through that. I was pretty impressed with it and what have you. I'm even more impressed to find that the costs of these items via Worcester Regulatory Services are going to be dealt with hopefully in the initial stage by them, and then they may come forward for some review of how much we have to pay in the future for these items. But the licensing, as I said, is delegated to Worcester Regulatory Services. And as it says in 3.5, the Licensing Act requires the licensing authority to review this every 5 years. Well, this is new. The current one took effect in 2020. This has to take effect this year, and we've got the prime items there and what have you. And as I said, I declared an interest at the start. And the amendments, which is very, very easy because it's quite a big document, Appendix 2 quite clearly shows you all the changes that are made, and that is very, very helpful for us as councillors to save trying to work it all out and what have you. Interesting that some of these other items that have been, I suppose I was going to say, banged about by the government, but have finally come forward, like Martin's Law and what have you, are very good. It will, and Ask Angela, I think, is there as well. So that will help. If you don't know what they are, please have a read, because they're absolutely imperative for licensed premises. Sorry, licensed properties and club premises and what have you. And of course, the thing that I'm more interested in, or very, very interested in here, was the insertion of bleed kits. It's only a recommendation. I wish it was mandatory, but little and often is the way forward. So eventually it may become mandatory, because they do save lives and they save limbs, like they did in my particular village 3 weeks ago. So I'm very impressed that that's included in this and what have you. So I'm happy to propose this to go forward for consultation, and just need a seconder, please.
David, if you're not going to vote, you can't propose.
Can't propose it.
No,
Okay,
you
I won't
can't.
propose it then.
In which case, I'm happy to propose on behalf of David, if that's okay.
I should second, but happy to second if that would help.
Any comments about that? Have you got anything, Niall, to add into that?
No, nothing. I think David covered all of the points in the report very well. Other than the results of the consultation will be brought back to this committee for consideration prior to approval, and then referral on to full council for it to be adopted.
Yeah, obviously anything that prevents crime and disorder and protects children from harm, and specifically looking at reducing violence against women and girls as well, is to be welcomed. So no problems with this going out to consultation at all.
Yep.
Well, I'm not going to take the thunder, because Andy Ford's come all the way over here to lead on this. So I'll pass you over first to Andy to go through this report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harrison. Andy Ford, Principal Planning Officer at Malvern Hills and Policy Team. So the SPD has been drafted by county council colleagues primarily, with input from Worcestershire Regulatory Services, and officers here at Malvern Hills have really been involved in just processing the document and ensuring that it is aligned with the South Worcestershire Development Plan policy and taking it through the necessary statutory processes for adopting the SPD. So the SPD essentially provides further guidance on the application of SWDP 31, pollution and land stability. So it supports that policy and provides further guidance to applicants putting together planning applications to ensure that air quality is improved and taken into consideration in new development. It's a very technical document in nature, as I'm sure you've seen, and obviously you can ask questions and I'll try and respond, but we may need to go back to county or Worcester Regulatory Services if there's any technical queries. So it also picks up on air quality management zones, which there are none in Malvern Hills, but there are in Worcester City and Wychavon. And because of that, and because it's a South Worcestershire Development Plan policy, the three councils are adopting the document. Worcester City and Wychavon have already adopted the SPD earlier in the summer. And when, if the council adopt the SPD on the 23rd of September, then in due course we will be re-adopting it against the new South Worcestershire Development Plan when that is in place. So I think that's the sort of overview, and happy to take any questions or hand back to Councillor Harrison.
Anybody want to comment, ask about it?
Yeah, I will, but, because I read that the issue of wood smoke's stated to be outside the scope of the SPD, but I know that government statistics show that you know, that there is quite some concern about air quality where wood smoke is concerned. And I think that on page 44 we agree that a stronger line should be taken and that we should discourage the use of wood burning stoves, but I don't understand how we as elected members can do this if it's outside the scope of this SPD, because I am contacted by quite a lot of residents who've got COPD and other kind of respiratory problems, and wood smoke is a real concern to them, and it does impact on their day-to-day life. So it's a question about what we can do if wood smoke is outside this SPD. And then also, are we measuring NOx and particulate matter anywhere in the district? And if not, have we got plans to do so? And then it's probably running parallel to this around the government's intention that new builds shouldn't have fossil fuel heating systems installed from now, basically. So how can we make that a reality, ensure that developers install air or ground source heat pumps? Because I don't know if our strategies at the moment are strong enough to be able to enforce that. So sorry if they're three tricky ones, but
Okay, no, that's fine. It's a planning point really, in the sense that the supplementary planning documents can't introduce new policies or new detail. That is for the local plan policy, SWDP 31, which was of course adopted or drafted almost 10 years ago now, in 2016. So the SPD can't really sort of add any further to that in terms of that particular point about particulates and burning wood smoke, etc. I mean, it's something that potentially we could look at in the new supplementary planning document, because the SWDP review equivalent policy is quite different to this one. It's obviously more up to date. So I think that's the response to that one. In terms of, I'm not sure about the measuring the of NOx across the district, but I can find out from Worcestershire Regulatory Services. And the final question, I've just slipped my mind actually. Oh yeah, yes, thanks, Vic. So that essentially will be a matter for building regulations, and really not the local plan, to enforce that when they come in.
Sorry, so just check my understanding. Does that mean it should be covered in the MPPF about the installation of heat and air source pumps rather than it being a local directive?
No, so it will be in the building regulations, which are separate to planning. So I don't think at the moment the MPPF 2024 covers that specific point. And we have got in the new policy, in the new local plan, a policy relating to electric vehicle charging installation in new development. And we've also got we've got a new renewables policy in the current local plan, but that's been taken forward into the new one, where we will be requiring 20% of energy generation from new development of a certain size to be generated from renewables and low carbon energy. So we have to be careful with what we can put in the local plan in terms of that type of thing. It needs to be evidenced and supported, and through the hearings which we've just completed over the last few months with the Planning Inspectorate, you know, they would be looking at that level of detail, and they've not found any problems as far as we know with that particular renewables and low carbon energy policy. But we've not got any or gone any further really with that, because it's quite difficult to get that type of thing into a local plan policy. Because and the argument is also that building regulations will be covering that off as well.
Okay, I appreciate what you've said. So my request is that we do as much as we can, as quickly as we can, around the issues around air source heat pumps and you know, ground source heat pumps and measuring air quality, please.
Sorry, yes, thank you, Chair. I would just like to comment about the concerns around air source and ground source heat pumps. I think we mustn't forget that most of these devices are manufactured in China, and we have got heating manufacturers in Worcestershire. I completely agree that those sorts of contemporary approaches are appropriate in new build, but in our existing homes, hybrid solutions are an option and would preserve jobs in Worcestershire and reduce emissions very considerably. So I do think we have to be open to multiple solutions in this area and not blinded by emissions at point of use as opposed to life cycle emissions. And I would just like to note that comment.
Yeah, thank you. But my point was around new builds, so it doesn't really apply.
I'm agreeing with your point around new build, but I'm concerned about jobs in Worcestershire. And as the hybrid point is generally overlooked, I'm making this point here for the sake of the jobs and the livelihoods of people in our county.
Okay, David, do you want to come in?
Can I just come back on that? I think one of the things we have to remember on development is that need or demand tends to produce development. And I know Bosch are already doing a lot of work on air source heat pumps. And I think as more of these companies do so, then we will see more of it produced in the UK.
But they won't be producing the air source heat pumps. They will, I think if you talk to them, you'll find that that's the case. But they basically will be able to innovate and continue the innovation which they are undertaking at present.
Yes, if I can. Interesting, I'd just like to add a comment back onto Councillor McVeigh there, that one of our house builders that's just finishing off building 255 houses. They've all got heat pumps. There's none on traditional gas or anything like that sort of thing. So that's the only one I know. So I can't go any further than that really. But the recommendations are there, 2.1, 2.2. So I'd like to propose those if I can.
Do we have a seconder for those? Beverly? Okay, that concludes this evening's business. Thank you, everybody.